From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I'm Jason Tenori, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo, welcome back. Dr. Jason here, Dental Lighthouse Podcast. And a lot of things going on, right? So today I want to spend some time talking about one-on-ones. We'll probably do this over a couple parts, right? The reason that it's on my mind and on my heart is for us organizationally, June is one of the 2 months per year where we do quote unquote formal reviews. And our formal reviews, and I'll unpack this probably more in part 2, but it really doubles down on a core value review, a compensation review, what's involved with that. And it's just a little bit more detailed versus what we call our informal one-on-ones, which are a little bit more what's the word I'm looking for? Relaxed, and what have you. So originally I was going to get on and start talking about our formal reviews, but it made me think that if you guys are not routinely doing informal reviews, then just jumping into formal reviews could be like drinking from a fire hose. So I just wanted to spend some time talking about one-on-ones in general, how to structure them, or at least how we structure them, and why I feel they're a benefit, why I feel sometimes they don't get done, both for legitimate and illegitimate excuses. Can you have an illegitimate excuse? I don't know. But that's what I wanted to talk about today. So let's just rewind the tape and talk about the framework for one-on-one. So first thing you need is what I call, or what Gino Wickman from EOS calls, an accountability chart, because ideally you need to have some structure in place, no matter if you have 6 employees or 60, on who's in charge of who's leading who's supporting who. And the reason that's important is because often team members don't know who to go to. And often, a lead, a supervisor, a team lead, whatever you want to call it, has no clarity on who they should be growing. So when you have a well laid out functional accountability chart, then a leader knows that they are responsible for these 3, 5, 7, 10 people. And those of you guys that have taken my servant leadership course and who I have coached one-on-one or in our group know that I personally don't believe that a leader can manage more than 8 to 10 people long-term. Let's even call it 6 to 10, with 8 being the sweet spot. So why is that? Because if we're going to be truly engaged and truly committed to the growth, the development, fulfilling needs of our team, then fully committed to the relationship, then once you get north of 8 people, it becomes really, really hard. You just don't have enough time to commit to all of these relationships. You don't have enough time to be fully engaged in one-on-ones. You don't have enough time to follow up and to keep these team members accountable, which is a basic human need. So those of you that are doing 15 or 20, leading 15 or 20 people, that's awesome. You're either a unicorn, or more likely you're not fully engaged in the relationship and you're simply checking a box to tell yourself that you've accomplished it. No judgment, but people don't grow when they have a leader that's not fully committed to to them, to the relationship, and to their growth. So you need an accountability chart. The next thing you need is you need to know what the speed limit is. The speed limit needs to be known and it needs to be posted. So what do I mean by that? You need to have core values that are in place, that are well-defined, and that are being lived on a daily basis. And you need to have clarity on the roles and responsibilities of each person's seat on their team. The reason I use the speed limit analogy is because it's unfair to give speeding tickets to people when the speed limit has not been posted. So it's unfair to go to someone on your team and say that they're behaving a specific way that goes against the culture of the practice if the behaviors, aka core values, aren't clearly chosen and defined. It's unfair to go to someone and say, well, you're not doing your job or you're not doing this specific task unless the roles and responsibilities of the seat that person's in have clearly been defined and articulated and gone over through the onboarding and through the training process of their onboarding. Sorry, I just got a phone call. I always forget to hit do not disturb on these videos, and I will do that now. So let's review. So we need an accountability chart, and we need to know who we're responsible for leading, and we need to know what the core values are and are they well defined and are we living them out daily. And we need to know the roles and responsibilities of each individual seat. Once we have that framework in place, then we can go into one-on-ones with predictability. Now, as someone that has made basically every mistake possible, I used to not do a regular cadence of what we'll call informal one-on-ones, and I would only do formal one-on-ones, and I would only do these once a year. And I read a book maybe 10 years ago that really enlightened me to why checking in with people or doing a review once a year was just ridiculous, right? So in this book, this guy painted a picture of what if a football coach only checked in with their player at the end of the season. And he creates this fictitious example where the coach and the player are together. And the coach basically says to the player, hey, Jason, good season, but I just need you to know a few things. In game 2, when you were playing over on the left side of the field, I really needed you to be on the right side of the field. And Jason is kind of looking at the coach and he's like, thanks a lot, coach. That would have been super helpful to know during game 2, not after a 16-game season. And it's a stupid example, but there is a little bit of reality to that. When I was doing formal reviews and I would meet with someone once a year, even twice a year for a formal review, I would have this built up list of things that I needed to talk to this person about. It could be a core value issue. It could be a roles and responsibilities issue. It could be either. And it was so unfair for me to wait until this quote unquote scheduled time to kind of unload on this person. Right. Looking back at it now, I just kind of laugh because any level of trust that I had with this team member immediately went away as soon as I would share this information at a formal review, right? Because 5, 6, 7 months would go by and I would not communicate with this person on a regular basis. I would wait till the formal review. And then I would say, hey, from a core value perspective of humility, you're missing the mark for this reason, this reason, this reason. And from a core value perspective of team player, you're missing the mark for this reason, this reason, this reason. And from a roles and responsibilities perspective, you're consistently not doing this and not doing that. And it would blindside somebody, right? So they thought that they were winning. They've gone through the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months without any feedback. So they're like, okay, well, no news is good news. So I must be doing a good job. Right. And the reality then came during this formal review where I would just blindside them. And all of a sudden the relationship changes, right? So they're like, oh, okay, I can improve upon that. I can improve upon that. I didn't realize that. And the trust is gone, right? Because they were under the assumption that they were doing a great job, or that they were at least meeting the standard. And then you come at them, and during this formal review, guns blazing, and you drop all this stuff on them. So again, if that's currently what you're doing, no judgment. I did it for half of my career. And then I finally came to the realization of like, wow, this is not how it should be done. And this is how a majority of people do it, right? Not even outside of dentistry. The corporate world is filled with these types of bureaucratic, formal reviews every 12 months where the employee gets absolutely no feedback up until that point, and then everything is just kind of dropped on them. So for that reason, I really need you to at least consider or buy into the possibility that more frequent informal one-on-ones could be a really, really good idea. It could be that coach coaching up that person in the middle of the game or even after the game, as opposed to after the season. So how do we do informal one-on-ones? Well, it really depends on the relationship between the leader and the person that they're having the one-on-one with. And the way I explain it to my team and to my coaching clients is, if the leader is a good communicator, extroverted, and can have a conversation predictably, then I feel that using open-ended questions during an informal one-on-one are super helpful. So what are some of those open-ended questions? Things like, help me understand if you feel like you're doing a good job. I like to ask the question of, if you own this practice tomorrow, what is the first thing that you would change? I love the question of, are you happy? Oh, yeah, I'm happy. Well, what would make you more happy? Do you feel like you're supporting your team well? What are some things that you could stop doing in an effort to be a better team player? Like, just super open-ended questions, right? And these types of open-ended questions typically are great to utilize once you have a little bit more of a relationship developed, right? You're not going to be using these types of open-ended questions your first one-on-one. Typically not. So for those of you guys that are maybe less communicative, that are maybe more introverted, or that need a little bit more structure for your one-on-ones, we use self-assessment forms. And self-assessment forms are a great tool. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these self-assessment statements in a document. Feel free to reach out to me for that information. My contact information is on the dentallighthouse.com website. So how do self-assessment statements work? Well, I typically would put 5, 6, 7 self-assessment statements on a piece of paper. And one of the statements might be, I routinely show up on time for work and I am prepared for the day. And then underneath that statement, there's ratings 1 through 5. So we're asking the employee, this is ahead of time. You would give them this sheet of paper, maybe 2 or 3 days ahead of your one-on-one. You would ask them to fill this out. 1 meaning you strongly disagree, 5 meaning you strongly agree, right? Another one could be, I routinely review my schedule before the day before to make sure that I'm prepared for my patients. I routinely show up as a great team player for the rest of my team, help out wherever and whenever I can. So there's so many self-assessment statements that you can use. And the reason I love self-assessment statements is because what I like to do is like I said, I'll have 5 or 6 on a piece of paper, and I'll always set the employee up with a few wins, right? If this employee continually comes into work on time and is prepared for the day, I'm going to add that one, right? If, let's say it's a dental assistant. If the dental assistant takes phenomenal x-rays and clinical photos, the statement would be, I routinely take x-rays and clinical photos that are above the standard, 1 through 5, right? But if there's something that I want to bring up with this assistant that maybe I'm uncomfortable bringing up, maybe that they're unaware of, then I would include a self-assessment statement regarding that. So what are some examples of that? Well, what if your assistant is routinely making temporary crowns that are not good, right? It either takes them too long or they're clinically below the standard, whatever it is. Then, and I wanted to talk about that with them during this informal one-on-one. I would say I routinely can produce temporary crowns that are anatomically acceptable and within an efficient period of time, right? And when they read that statement and they give themselves a 4 or a 5, and you really think they should be giving themselves a 2, then you automatically now have permission to have a conversation. Because what I forgot to add here a couple minutes ago is my team member is filling out these forms, rating themselves 1 through 5, but the leader should also be doing this as well. And we share each other's answers at the same time. So if we have a couple wins, I show up on time, I'm a good team player, whatever the statements are, and you guys both, the team member and the leader, both circle 5, and then you get down to the statement, about temporary crowns, and the assistant circles 4 or 5, and you circle 1 or 2, you're like, whoa, okay, there's a discrepancy here. Let's have a conversation. And the conversation can go from remanaging expectations, remanaging or recommunicating the roles and responsibilities, the tasks of this particular statement. So, a conversation could be like, hey, Mary, help me understand why you feel you're really dialed in with your temporary crowns. And she can give you her perspective. And then I would say, that's great. I just need you to understand that in working with you over the last few weeks, your temporary crowns traditionally have open contacts. They traditionally are short on the margin, and they take significantly longer than they should. You're doing them in 20 minutes, and ideally they should be done in 10, right? That's amazing feedback that ideally you're giving in the moment, day to day. But at the very worst case, you're giving during an informal monthly review. And then you could then unpack like, well, where do we go from here? How can I help you get to the point where we can both circle 5 for this self-assessment statement? Do you need me to work with you more in the moment? Do you want me to send you some online videos that can help you? Do you want to work with one of our other assistants that are really good at making temporary crowns? What action items can we set up so when we check in next month, we can confidently both circle 4 or 5 for this particular category? I've just found that it's a really, really good way to bring something up that could be a little bit uncomfortable, especially if the leader is a little bit more introverted or if the leader doesn't have a ton of experience with these types of conversations. This is a very predictable way to bring that up. I'll tell you, the worst thing to do is to not have any informal one-on-ones, wait till the formal review, 12 months later, 8 months later, 9 months later, and then say, hey, Mary, your temporary crowns suck. And she's like, what? Like, she's been making temporary crowns for you for 7, 8 months, and this is the first feedback you're giving her? How unfair. You would never do that to your children. Like, if your children were walking around on a daily basis lying and stealing, you wouldn't wait till their birthday to be like, hey, just need you to be aware that over the last year, I've seen you lie and steal a bunch, and it's just not good. It's just not what we're all about. I need you to get it together. Like, that's ridiculous. But we do this to our employees that have been breaking core values, willingly or unwillingly, employees that are creating services and products and experiences in the office that are below the standard of care. Like, we don't have these conversations with people in the moment, or at least at the very least during a monthly informal one-on-one, but we wait until a formal review to bring it up, or we just fire them, right? That's how we fool ourselves into saying, well, I keep people accountable because I let them go, right? So again, I originally wanted to kind of talk about the formal review, but many of you probably would need a refresher with the informal review. So that's what I wanted to do here. Just a quick recap. Ideally, it's monthly. At the very least, it should be quarterly, but I would really want you to do it monthly. And those of you guys that are coaching clients of mine or that have been through my servant leadership course know that if something is occurring that's below the standard, again, I always look at it from a core values perspective and from a roles and responsibilities perspective. If something's happening that's below the standard, I don't want you to wait till the informal review. Even if you do it monthly, you should have we'll call it end of the storm conversation, ideally that day. And if you can do that, great. But at the very, very, very least, it should be monthly at the informal one-on-one. So what are some reasons that I get from doctors, from office managers, from team leads that they struggle with this? Well, by far the first thing is time. I don't have enough time. Okay. So I hear you, right? If you don't have enough time, then there's a few things that you need to consider. Do you have too many people that you're responsible for? Are you responsible for 6 to 8 people, or are you responsible for 12 to 15? Right. That's the first thing you need to ask yourself. The second thing is, have you figured out your ideal week? We've spent a lot of time both on podcasts and during the servant leadership course, and I have a Google Doc out there somewhere that I can send to you guys on how important it is to have an ideal week template. You can't just commit to something without having the capacity in your week to do it. So you need to know, in my opinion, down to 15-minute increments every day that you work, what you're going to be doing. And if you're going to be clinical 4 days a week, that's a lot. If you're in a leadership position, it's really, really difficult to be clinical 4 days a week. You need to have a conversation with your owner, or if you are the owner, you need to have a conversation with yourself about, I need to create a little bit of capacity here in my ideal week to have these all important conversations. And to be honest with you, if your team is manageable, 6 to 8 people, we're talking about an hour a week. If you found an hour per week to do these, each one takes about a half hour. You're doing 2 per week, 8 per month. Boom, you're done. When you don't carve out time during your ideal week to do these things, then the urgent starts to take place of the important. And then you have team members that have not been given any feedback, that struggle to understand if they're winning, and get shit on during a formal review that occurs 1 to 2 times a year. So first thing, make sure your team's manageable in terms of size. Make sure that you have carved out time in your ideal week to have these one-on-ones. I would strongly encourage you to make sure that they're scheduled on a regular basis. The people I do one-on-ones with know 95% of the time it's going to be the same exact time every month, every day and every month. And that level of predictability leads to having them on a one-on-one, having them on a monthly basis. So, and then again, the final thing that I get from a pushback perspective, like I said, team's too big, I don't have enough time. And then the importance, right? So many leaders, especially doctors, but also some office managers, are of the mindset of, if they just did their job, quote unquote, if they just did their job, then I wouldn't need to do these one-on-ones. Well, the reality is, it's a basic human need. Okay, not a want. It's a basic human need to get feedback from your leader, right? So we've talked a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Level 1 and level 2 needs are pretty much always taken care of for people that we're talking about, right? Shelter, air, enough income to support themselves, a job. I mean, you can go anywhere and get those things, right? The level 3 and 4 needs are that make employees feel fulfilled. They make employees feel part of a team. Are feedback. Are you expressing honesty to them, letting them know if they're winning? Are you being kind to them, giving them sincere and specific praise, being an empathetic listener? Are you being humble in their presence? Are you forgiving them when they make a mistake? All of these agape love principles that we've talked about during the servant leadership course. So people need this stuff, even though if you feel, and I used to feel this way, foolishly think, well, I don't need those things. So just because you believe that you don't need those things doesn't mean that your team doesn't need those things. So you need to give these things to your team: honesty, kindness, humility, forgiveness, patience, all these things that we've talked about at nausea. So those are the three obstacles that leaders will give me. And hopefully I've just proven to you why each of those obstacles are excuses and not real reasons to not do a regular cadence of monthly informal one-on-ones. All right, guys. So that's it for today. Probably next week, I'll share more of how we do how we do the formal reviews. And part of our formal reviews are a compensation review. So that's the important part, right? Because everybody wants to make more money. Everybody feels that they deserve more money. The reality is, if we're going to be fiscally responsible, then we need to have structure in place on when to give raises, who to give raises to, how much of a raise to give, stuff like that. So I'll totally unpack that next week in part 2 of this series on one-on-ones. If you need me for anything, if you want to be a guest on the podcast, or if you want to just shoot the shit, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information, email, and cell phone are on the website, dentallighthouse.com. You can always shoot me a text and start the conversation. Love you guys. Later.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tenori, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.